Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. It is Wednesday. You know what that means? It means
it's Lunch Bunch
Lunch
Day.
Bunch at Retro Metro. If you haven't signed up for the Retro Metro Lunch Bunch, where you join us, you join Sarah, you join me. There's nothing more fun than watching us eat.
That's true. Yeah. You're not allowed to eat. You just watch us eat.
That's right. Yes, you will watch us enjoy the delicious food. Sarah eats with her mouth open.
I do. And I talk with my mouth full.
Yeah, it's quite a show to behold. You go to KSGF.com, get yourself signed up. If you win, you'll be contacted, and you and up to 5 people of your choosing. You don't have to pick 5 people. We've had a couple people. It's just that winner and then one other person. But usually it's a full group or close to it, and then we'll contact you and we'll pick a Wednesday, and then you will join Sarah and me for lunch at Retro Metro. And we always love it and people always, they say to us, they're like, thank you so much for doing this. And I think people think I'm joking, but I'm like, thank you for entering because we get the free lunch too.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
It's a win-win because Retro Metro, they take care of the lunch. They're actually, we pitch it as, we're buying you lunch. We're not really buying you lunch. Retro Metro is doing that, and that's just the sort of folks they are over there. Fantastic people. Chase is almost always the one that takes care of us.
Yep.
I'm a firm believer when it comes to restaurants, like most industries, but restaurants in particular. If you have the servers in particular that are there for a very long time, that says a lot about the restaurant itself, because it is not easy to keep employees. And Retro Metro is one of those that, those employees have been there, many of them as long as we've been doing Lunch Bunch, which is probably going on 3 years now, I imagine. We also do have our Heroes Breakfast coming up this Friday. If you're a veteran, come by and get free breakfast with us from 6A to 9A at Scramblers. That is thanks to Scramblers, also Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and the Warrior's Journey, which is an incredible organization. Before we get to the news, there's been this shift from protesting against enforcing our immigration laws to full-out aiding and abetting individuals that are in this country illegally and also have committed other, oftentimes violent crimes at the same time. And this has, been showing itself in a number of different forms. Everything from showing up with blowhorns at locations in which there is going to be an attempt by law enforcement to capture criminals who are in this country illegally and warning them to get out, to posting the names, the phone numbers, the pictures and addresses of some of the agents, which when we're dealing with drug cartels, it's clear what is going on here. This isn't, they're pitching it as in, well, if you see any of these people coming, run. That's clearly not what is going on here. This is an attempt to really make sure that the drug cartels know where these people live, and this way they can go after them and just eliminate them from the scenario if possible. This is a clear problem, well beyond simple protest. And it's something that, in terms of the information itself, has come from internal sources. Kristi Noem recently revealing that she's pretty much pegged who it is that is responsible for this and the action that she plans on taking against them. So we'll play some of that audio, though she did note that there will be consequences. And, as much focus as there is on the border and with the successes, at the same time, there are still some underreported stories. I don't think because it's an attempt to dismiss what is going on, but I think there is oftentimes a failure to recognize the significance of what these things mean. For example, there's a Texas rancher killed by an IED on his own land that was presumably planted by one of the Mexican drug cartels. So we've really gotten to the point now where they're using military tactics. They are using terrorist tactics against Americans. And there was so much discussion during the campaign about whether or not the military would be used in order to combat this problem. And Trump did what Trump oftentimes does, and he leaves the door open. Says, well, maybe that is a potential solution. We'll have to look at it. And many people flipped out over it, and you can't do that. And it's the knee-jerk reaction, of course, anytime Trump says anything. But when you are talking about drug cartels that in many ways act as militias, and they are planting IEDs on American soil and killing Americans, at some point, just even psychologically, I think Americans are going to shift from seeing what has been occurring from a simple invasion, if you will, of people who just want a better life, to recognizing that we're looking at sort of military-esque invasion of the country. So we've got some of that as well this morning. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447-KSGF. Weather in a moment right now. The latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 59. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66.
KSGF.com, your chance to win tickets to see Alabama live at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena Sunday, May 25th. Just head on over to KSGF.com to get yourself registered. Anti-ICE activists disrupting LA operations, posting photos and names and phone numbers of agents. Flyers with all of this information surfacing in one Southern California neighborhood. Multiple federal law enforcement sources confirmed to Fox News national correspondent Bill Malugin that the anti-ICE activists who have been interfering with the operations in the LA area in recent days have now started putting up posters featuring the personal info of ICE and Homeland Security investigation officers working in the Los Angeles, Southern California area. The posters, which are written in Spanish, translate roughly to read, "Careful with these faces." The poster continues, "These armed agents work in Southern California. ICE and SI racially terrorize and criminalize entire communities with their policies. They kidnap people from their homes and from the streets, separating families and fracturing communities. Many people have died while locked up in jail, prisons, and detention centers." It is unclear which activist group is putting up the posters, but ICE officials said they are aware and investigating, noting that these pathetic activists are putting targets on the back of our law enforcement as they shield MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and other vicious gangs that traffic women and children, kidnap for ransom, and poison Americans with lethal drugs. These individuals will be held accountable for obstructing the law and justice. This should not be controversial. Now, this is being presented largely as a way to just tip off people who are in this country illegally. This is just to help them evade capture by law enforcement. But again, that's not what is going on here. What is going on here is it's essentially a target list. Because if you just think about the realities of the information that is given and what is and is not necessary. I mean, if you have people that are in a community and they really, truly, genuinely are concerned and worried about being captured by law enforcement, being captured by ICE or Homeland Security, the way that those operations carry out, you are not going to in any way, shape, or form like when you put the faces and the phone numbers and the home addresses of these individuals, that is not necessary information if all you're trying to do is give people a heads up, look out for this guy. I think that it's also fair to say that if your only goal was to warn people in this country illegally, that the most detailed information one would need to give in order to give them a heads up is to note, hey, if you see, a number of vehicles that look like they're law enforcement, or, if you identify if they're dark SUVs or if they're regular police vehicles or, whatever that looks like. And you would give a heads up to these people in the community. You'd be saying, hey, if you see this sort of activity, then that means there's a good chance that there is going to be some sort of raid. That is the sort of information, and we've all seen this play out, right, on any sort of cop show or in a movie, not necessarily when it comes to illegals, but you got a drug house or some house that is about to be raided, and, somebody peeks out the window and then they see slowly a unmarked vehicle drive by, and, they go look out the back window, and it's that activity, it's that behavior that is the real tip-off to them. It's not, well, I wonder if that's John Williams, whose phone number is ... who lives at such and such address, because I saw a poster of that individual. That information is only relevant if you are looking to track those people down. Now, I suspect that, and I'm sure that Homeland Security, ICE, the Justice Department is fully aware of this, that what this is, it's a targeting list that is being put up by gang members. And it is an attempt to make sure that, one, either these individuals get so terrorized that you will have the Trump administration pull back, you will have those that are in charge of that particular neighborhood or that district, that area of Los Angeles, that they will determine, hey, this is too dangerous in this particular area. Let's instead move on to an area in which there isn't, essentially gangs trying to have operational control over that particular territory, and then their area will be left alone. It is an attempt to terrorize those who are attempting to enforce the law into just backing off and leaving their territory alone. This isn't about just giving a heads up to, the people who have committed no crimes other than looking for a better life here in America. When it comes to this particular type of behavior, Border Czar Tom Homan was asked about this recently, and his comments were typical for Tom Homan.
I have so many questions. First of all, if they're shouting and helping these people get away with bullhorns, how is that legal to get help from the people in the streets? I know they can protest, but that's not what they're doing.
You're exactly right. When they come to they cross the line of impediment, and that's why I'm working very close, starting this morning with Department of Justice, and where do they cross that line of impediment? So they may find themselves in a pair of handcuffs very soon. So working with DOJ on that, get some legal guidance on that. I'm not an attorney. I know what SecOps is about. I know what crossing that line is, but getting DOJ back up on that. So it's something we're looking at right now, Harris. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. This is not a game. When we show up these sites, this is a dangerous job for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and all the DOJ agencies. To have that type of interference puts our officers at great risk. Not only the officers, it puts the aliens at great risk because anything can happen when we take our eyes off the goal here. So we're addressing that immediately today. I'm addressing OPSEC today, operational security, how these leaks are happening. We've already identified how this operation got leaked. I'll deal with that today.
All right, Tom Homan. Now, that's not even in reference to the posters that are going up in those particular LA neighborhoods that have the names and home addresses and phone numbers and the faces of these individual agents, but simply the fact that there is an attempt by left-wing activists through blowhorns to impede, interfere in the operations in order to detain these individuals that are in this country, most often also criminals, many of them violent as well. The other problem that has occurred is the tipping off through media outlets. There are people within the government who have been tipping off these different media outlets as to when raids would take place or what areas they're going to take place. And this, of course, makes the job not only more difficult, but potentially dangerous when you start to identify where it is that these operations are going to take place and you're dealing with gangs, violent gangs. You obviously have the potential opportunity for some sort of ambush to occur. And it was pretty clear early on that these were internal individuals or individual that was leaking this information. And immediately, can we note the difference between this administration and past administrations? The prior one in particular. They could never find who leaked anything from the Biden administration. Never managed to figure that out. Unable to. And even in Trump's prior administration, when he tried to play along and put some establishment people in positions of power, it was almost a daily basis that his phone calls to world leaders were leaked, or that conversations that were, not to be revealed were leaked, all of which were federal crimes. And when the deep state was in charge of these different divisions of government, Department of Justice, FBI, Homeland Security, they were never able to find out who was leaking. The Supreme Court, the leaking of the, quote, overturning of Roe v. Wade. Oh, and that massive investigation was done. You're talking about the Supreme Court and very, very few people that actually had access to and the ability to release that finding or that opinion early, which, again, in violation of federal law. And they couldn't figure out who did it. It's been, I think, a week or so. And according to Kristi Noem, they already know who the leakers are. And here's what she had to say last night on that issue.
I have found some leakers. We are continuing to get more. They will be fired. There will be consequences. And remember, when they leak information to the press in order to blow an op, they are putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. They are risking their lives and putting their families in the position where they'll have to live without those individuals any further. So you bet we have used every tactic that we have. If you remember, we talked just last week about how I'm using polygraphs to go after and to really interview these folks because we are a national security agency. I have that tool I can use. Also looking at their emails, looking at their communications. And it's amazing how these bureaucrats who have an agenda to stop the work that we're doing to bring safety to America, how they will sell each other down the river if it's just to protect themselves. So don't worry, I am doing everything to find these leakers and to get rid of them so that we can do our work and our law enforcement officers and agents can do it safely.
Isn't that, though, amazing how quickly? It's almost as if in prior administrations, whenever there was some leak in violation of federal law, it's almost as if they really didn't want to figure out who did it.
How about that?
Yeah, the consistency of never being able to get to the bottom of it, never being able to figure out who was behind it. And here, I think it's been about a week since that tip, maybe 2 weeks. But point being is that it's just here, and you listen to Kristi Noem describe it, it really isn't that hard to figure out because these people will turn on each other so quickly the moment that they think they may be in trouble that, like rats on a ship, they are jumping and they are pointing to other rats. Like, oh, you want info? I'll tell you who's responsible for this. So it almost seems as if this isn't even that difficult of a thing to figure out. Springfield's let me tell you this, too. It needs to go beyond firing. These people need to go to prison for a very, very, very long time. You are disrupting an operation and operations that in some cases potentially deal with terrorism. Let's not forget the Trump administration has designated a number of these different cartels as terrorist organizations. And when you have people in the federal government giving a heads up while using their allies in the media to potential raids that are targeting what are classified as terrorist organizations, this is some serious stuff. It is giving the upper hand to the enemy. It is giving the upper hand to these violent, vile drug cartels, these human traffickers, these individuals that are, again, in many instances, classified as terrorists because it is a classification of a terrorist organization. And they're being given the advantage, or at least that's the attempt to give them the advantage, by people within our own government. Those people should go to prison for a very, very long time, and arguably, some could even go so far as to recognize it as giving aid and comfort to the enemy, which is the definition of treason. And we know in the United States of America what the punishment possibilities are for that. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Here's breakfast coming up Friday. Scramblers, join us. Love for you, too. If you are a veteran, then breakfast is on. Scramblers, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and The Warrior's Journey. And so many of you who helped us with that fundraiser a couple of 3 weeks ago or so with St. George's Donuts on National and Battlefield, helping supplement the cost, especially with the eggs. We just have a fundraiser specifically for the cost of eggs and that massive slaughter of millions or however many chickens. You still have chickens?
I do. I've got 3.
See, you had foxes slaughtering your chickens before the government started slaughtering them here last year.
But I do thankfully have 3, and so I still get eggs, so I don't have to worry. I don't even know how much they are right now. Like $4?
When I was, where was I? I was somewhere. I think I saw them between 5 and 6.
Sure.
Now I don't know. I think that was just pretty much like the standard dozen, not anything fancy. And so I'm guessing that's probably around the going rate. We just rely on people we know who have their own chickens.
Are you
That's
waiting for me to be
we
like,
actually,
hey, do you need some?
That's why I'm talking about it. I'm just
Okay.
hinting around.
Well, I don't have a full dozen
We
right
actually
now.
don't eat a tremendous amount of eggs.
I don't either. So
Yeah,
3 chickens is perfect
It
for
is
us.
not part of a normal. But we can look and be like, oh, well, we eat chicken on average this many times a week, or we eat fish on. I'd say how often do we eat eggs? Rarely. It's not something that we eat that often. So we have so far escaped all of the pain of this, unless you want it out in the restaurants. I mean, they're just really getting hit by this. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. A traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 59. And on Friday, sunny skies with a high near 66.
Texas rancher killed by IED near Mexico border in apparent cartel attack, February 5th, Texas rancher. Antonio Cespedes Saldierna, a 74-year-old rancher from Brownsville, Texas, died when his vehicle detonated on his ranch in San Fernando near the U.S. border, according to Texas Border Business. The explosion also took the life of his wife, severely injured, his wife, and he was severely injured. Both of them were in the truck when the IED was triggered. He's currently hospital and receiving medical care. Authorities strongly suspect that a drug cartel planted the explosive device, a common weapon of criminal organizations in the region. Cartels often use IEDs to exert control over border towns and keep rival factions off their turf. And I guess when you start getting into the thing about these drug cartels is they do operate not unlike what you would have with special forces, with some form of military operation. These are oftentimes very well disciplined and very well trained and organized militias, if you will, for the purposes, of course, drug running. And in our minds, when we talk about drug traffickers, we talk about drug runners, and even drug cartels, I think that most Americans just think about drug activities in the context that we know. You know, people in the streets, or, you know, they bring it in and then they break it up and they sell it, and you get this imagery that is not so militaristic, but you start seeing these stories pop up and you recognize how it is that they operate, and it becomes more clear that they operate in this sort of military fashion. And when you have that making its way over the border, you just are dealing with something a whole lot different. And utilizing IEDs, weapons of war, if you will. I mean, you want to talk about the term weapon of war. The left loves to use that on any sort of firearms. Well, IEDs really genuinely are weapons of war. I mean, outside of that, there isn't, that is one area in which somebody could legitimately claim. It's not like that is necessarily used for home protection so much. I suppose you could use it for home protection, but it isn't something that really ever is. It is used in times of war or by terrorist organizations in times of war. And to have that on our border and making its way, slowly into the United States of America, I fear that we are looking at these cartels the way that we looked at terrorists before September 11th, 2001. And that is, we recognize that there were bad guys, and we recognize that every once in a while they'd hijack a plane or they would blow something up in another country, but we didn't need to worry about any sort of real organized military-style attack on the United States, when in fact that plan was underway and it was executed. And my fear is that we are culturally, and I think the Trump administration gets this. They see what's going on and understand it, but we're not really fully grasping what it is that we're up against with these different drug cartels. Now, the good news, and these numbers have been coming out in a number of different fashions, just the news reporting that even before Congress acts, Trump's border policies already crater illegal immigration by 95%. 95%. He's going into his 5th week in office. The first major step Trump took in re-entering the White House was declaring the border crisis a national emergency, allowing for reallocation of personnel and resources from the armed forces to support the activities of the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Homeland Security. In this case, the goal to obtain complete operational control of the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, that is in reference to what I was talking about earlier, and noting that the Trump administration gets this, and what they knew is that we had surrendered operational control of our border under the Biden administration. The cartels were running our border. In another January 20th executive action without Congress, Trump suspended the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program indefinitely, Executive Order 12013, stating that the United States has been inundated with record levels of migration, including through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. Cities and small towns have sought federal aid to manage the burdens of new arrivals. This order suspends the U.S. RAP until such time as the further entry into the United States of refugees aligns with the interests of the United States. The goal of the order is to fortify the U.S. capabilities to counter threats to the safety and security of its citizens, even without Congress. Trump, again, designated cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and its members as specifically designated global terrorists. And then it lists a number of the different cartels. What is noteworthy of this, the debate that was taking place once the Democrats and the media realized that illegal immigration was something that was harmful to their cause, that cause retaining power. When Biden came in, of course, he put arguably the most incompetent person possible to be the border czar. That was Kamala Harris. So incompetent, even she tried to claim that she never had that job. And the fact that while she was running for president, that was not only not a bragging point for the left and for the media, the fact that they tried to deny she ever was the border czar tells you what a failure she was, if the goal was to actually secure the border. once it became clear that this was something that was their treatment of the border, Biden opening the border up, inviting all of these illegals to come into the country, all of a sudden well, no, we want to secure the border, but what did they say? Well, we have to have Congress to do it. Have to have Congress do it. We can't do anything without Congress. This is all Congress's fault. Fortunately, the American people understood that that wasn't the case. We remember when, and this is what Democrats play off of, they got Republicans scared, particularly in the Senate, into believing that people were going to start blaming them. So they concocted this border security bill that was not a border security bill. In fact, it did the opposite. It actually increased funding for the problem. It increased funding to help funnel illegals in. And Trump, rightfully so, saw this and noted this and said, "Do not pass. This is not a good thing. It's not a positive thing." This was portrayed as Trump trying to make sure that the border stayed chaotic so that it would increase his chances of getting elected president. Which, of course, that accusation contradicted the left's narrative that the border was secure. Point being is that we spent, I arguably, since the midterm elections, I'd say the 2022 midterm elections, being told that you could not start securing the border without Congress doing something about it. And that has been proven once again to be untrue. Congress has not done one single thing since Trump got elected president in regards to the border. Trump has, using his power as an executive. And you've got, because of that, illegal immigration catering by 95% the encounters at the border, those trying to get across the border illegally. 95% in just a month's time. You think about all that time wasted, all of that total and complete BS. And if it weren't for Trump, the fact that billions upon billions upon billions of more dollars would have been taken from us or borrowed in our name for some sort of border control bill that was not only completely unnecessary, but I guarantee you wouldn't not even come close to the success of Trump with his pen and his executive orders and what success he's already delivered for the United States in just a month's time. You think about that. And when you recognize that, all of the money that has been spent on other things in this country that was completely unnecessary, that it's just a matter of how you do things, not how much money you throw at it. I don't know that there's any, I know right now, greater example of money is not the lack of money is not the problem, it's the approach. Whether you're talking about crime, you're talking about education. And the fact that when it came to the answer of how it is to stop illegals from coming across the border and the establishment, it was have another bill with hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars versus Trump that's like, no, we don't need any additional money. All we need to do is start, a couple executive orders, start enforcing the law that is already on the books, and look at the result. It's Trump's way versus the establishment way. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. We're on YouTube as well. You can watch us there. What do you just search? Springfield's Talk 1041.
That's right.
Are we
Our handle is at 1041 KSGF.
Handle. We're truck drivers.
Yeah. 10-4.
Now, are we going to, again, on my Facebook page, are we going to start doing that again? I know we were kind of having a discussion about this yesterday.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I might test it out to see if we're going to get kicked off there or not. But for the meantime, what I've been doing is I just put like the YouTube link to the live stream each day. So I don't know yet.
All right. I was just curious.
That's what I got for you. I might.
We're talking in the last segment about the Trump administration without spending any extra money, without Congress, has already in a month's time been able to crater the number of illegals coming across our border by 95%. And you think about the alternative that was presented prior to the election, hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars, and it would not have done anything to really, truly help. This is the difference between somebody who is in charge that understands results and how to get results. And sometimes the way to get, that how to get results, that doesn't mean that somebody knows from the get-go, first time, every time. But when you try something and it doesn't work, then you adjust. That's Trump. This story is another example of it. Breitbart reporting exclusive. Lee Zeldin, EPA finishes phase 1, hazardous material removal in L.A. in just 28 days. You know how long the EPA, before Trump got Zeldin in there and got things going, how long it was that they expected phase 1 to take? Potentially up to 1 year. That's what they were saying. And Trump said no. That is ridiculous. Breitbart reporting that the Environmental Protection Agency officially completed phase 1 of the cleanup effort in the Palisades fire and Eaton fire in Los Angeles on Tuesday, finishing in just 28 days after President Donald Trump ordered the agency to move as quickly as possible. The fires burned, of course, nearly 24,000 acres, nearly 7,000 structures. Trump and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin set a more ambitious target of 30 days after the EPA said that it would take at least 90 days or potentially up to a year. So Trump puts Zeldin in charge, and the new target, instead of up to a year, is 30 days, and they did it in 28. In an exclusive statement to Breitbart News, Administrator Zeldin said President Trump set up an ambitious deadline of 30 days for EPA to get the hazardous material cleanup done after the catastrophic wildfires in L.A., and EPA got the job done in 28 days. How often do you hear about government getting something done before the deadline? He went on to say, I'm extremely proud of the phenomenal job of our team to aid in the recovery. They've set the bar for future emergency response efforts. And you know what is... There's one of two things going on here. As we see the massive success at the border already, as we see an EPA that goes from a cleanup time of up to a year to 28 days, either Trump has managed to craft this Avenger-style team of superheroes that are able to do things that are far beyond what any other human being is capable of, or we have just been accepting people in charge of these divisions of government that are completely incompetent and frankly don't care about producing results. Or perhaps that's part of their goal. As we see DOGE play out increasingly, I think for a lot of us, we recognize that these agencies end up being about doling out money, doling out contracts to friends, to donors, And the longer something takes, the more money that has to be doled out. It all really starts to come into focus. How much of it is incompetency versus if you run a department like the EPA and you've got friends, you have donors that are in these industries that do this sort of cleanup, and you know how much more money they get to make if it takes a year to do it instead of 28 days? So perhaps the incompetency oftentimes is either fully greed or it's married along with the incompetency. Like, hey, what do we care? It's just more money for us. I think there's a combination of things going on here. One, Trump has done a tremendous job of picking people who have proven they know how to do this stuff. We also have not been accustomed to that in this country, where meritocracy is portrayed as something that is bad, something that is for the privilege. Picking people who have proven they know how to do these things as opposed to making sure that we have a rainbow of colors and personalities that reflect the average American city so that everyone feels comfortable and welcome whenever the rescuers come their way. Instead of all of that, just saying, who's best at the job? Who's best at the job? And the results are remarkable. And you think about what is the answer of the traditional standard elite in this country. And this applies to local all the way to federal, global even. In order to make government work better, you have to put more money into it. Now, what do you think costs more? An EPA operation that takes up to a year, or when you're able to pull off that same EPA operation in only 28 days? I would argue that having it done in 28 days cost a heck of a lot less than a year. So here's an instance where not only is the answer to getting things done in a more effective manner more money, they were able to get things done in extremely, much more effectively for a lot less money. And the border's the same situation. Less money, more effective. Money is not the answer. Money is not the answer for better education in this country. Money is not the answer for better border security in this country. Money is not the money is not the answer for a better functioning EPA in this country. And it isn't to say that money is an unnecessary tool. It clearly is. But when you have within 5 or 6 weeks this skyrocketing success rate for a fraction of the money that would have been spent otherwise, that's a clue. The problem isn't money, it's not funding, it's how things are being run. And the results we're seeing shows that that's just the truth. This is one of the things that I've noticed people who hate Trump have a very difficult time wrapping around their mind. The reason that people really, really love Trump isn't because, oh, he's Donald Trump, and I just decided to love the guy. It's because he does stuff like this. Things that we have been told, many of us, for our entire lives are absolutely impossible. But he does it. Results. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, spring, it is right around the corner, which means now is a great time to get your home ready for the warmer weather that lies ahead. One of the ways to get your home ready is with a free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, that free roof inspection is more than the guys coming out and just climbing on your roof and just checking on your shingles. They check for any type of tree limbs that could pose a threat during storms. They check your gutters, your vents, and they can even catch structural issues from deteriorating decking. And then whenever they do that free roof inspection for you, they take tons of photos and videos so you can see exactly what they see, and then they work through that process to make sure you get the best solution for your home. Maybe you're in a situation where you get the green light, maybe it's time to schedule some repairs, or maybe it is time to get that whole new roof. Whatever the situation is, the Pyramid Roofing Company is going to be upfront and honest with you. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection with Josh, go ahead and give the Pyramid Roofing Company team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid team under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
More winning. Art of the deal. Ukraine agrees to Trump administration's minerals bargain. In an interesting bit of news out of Eastern Europe, Ukraine has agreed to a proposal from the Trump administration on American access to strategic minerals in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say Kiev is now ready to sign the agreement on jointly developing its mineral resources, including oil and gas, after the U.S. dropped demands for a right to $500 billion in potential revenue from exploiting the resources. Although the text at this time lacks explicit security guarantees, the officials argue that they had negotiated far more favorable terms and depicted the deal as a way of broadening the relationship with the U.S. to shore up Ukraine's prospects after 3 years of war. What some people are recognizing clearly in Ukraine, though I don't know Zelensky is one of them, is that the more involved we are in the Ukrainian economy, the more important their economy is to us, the greater security they have. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. Right before the news mentioned this deal between Ukraine and what Trump and his team were negotiating, that's access to minerals in Ukraine as part of this entire deal. And then, Town Hall had a story on it at the top of the news as well. A couple of things about this that I think is interesting. One, increasingly it appears as if Zelensky is less in control of things as I imagine he would like it to appear. This came to light, or some of it's in retrospect, but last week, Marco Rubio had that sit-down interview with Catherine Herridge, and that's where he revealed the conversation J.D. Vance, had with Zelensky, in which they said, hey, we want access to these mineral rights. At the time, Marco Rubio said that Trump was looking at $500 billion, or if he didn't say it, it was reported in the story. But Rubio was saying at that point I think he threw out $200 billion as a number. Now, over what period of time, exactly how that translates, I'm not really sure of those details. But point being is he noted that Zelensky's like, yeah, sounds great, sounds awesome. I just got to, get it through our legislative process. That won't be a problem. And Rubio said the next thing we know, he's out there telling the media, yeah, he really told the U.S., he said, I'm not going to accept that deal. And they realized at that point they couldn't trust this guy when it comes to the negotiating, and that he was making things more difficult. Well, it wasn't long after that you had someone else from the Ukrainian government, not Zelensky, coming out and saying, hey, no. We're working with the U.S. on this thing. In fact, not only is it something that we're going to do, we're in the final stages of getting this done. Now you have this announcement coming out of the Ukrainian government, not directly from Zelensky, at least in the current reporting on it, that the deal is done. And I just think that there's something telling, though, what it is. Something's going on here to where these major announcements, because this is a big announcement, that these are all things that are steps that are necessary in order to get closer to this thing coming to an end. So every time, whether it is Putin or Zelensky or Putin or whomever in Ukraine says, okay, we hit this benchmark, that is a step closer to that agreement being done, to both sides saying, okay, we agree to all this stuff. The fact that Zelensky is not the one that is doing the messaging and the announcing on this, at least at this point, that there's something potentially is going on there. Whether, you can speculate, but one potential scenario is that some of the powers that be in the Ukrainian government are slowly dismissing his authority as the president of Ukraine. They are just, hey, if he's going to be a problem on this, we want this war to come to an end. We'll make this deal. We will make this happen. You don't need Zelensky to make this happen. And there could be a number of reasons for that. According to the Financial Times, it was Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Ola Stefanishnya, and Justice Minister who were the ones leading the negotiations. So Zelensky was, according to these reports, he was left out of this stuff. The Financial Times, continuing, the final version of the agreement, dated February 24th, and seen by the Financial Times, would establish a fund in which Ukraine would contribute 50% of proceeds from the future monetization of state-owned mineral resources, including oil and gas and associated logistics. The fund would invest in projects in Ukraine. It excludes material resources that already contribute to Ukraine's government coffers, meaning it would not cover the existing activities of Ukraine's largest gas and oil producers. However, the agreement omits any reference to U.S. security guarantees, which Kiev had originally insisted on in return for agreeing to the deal. It also leaves crucial questions such as the size of the U.S. stake in the fund and the terms of joint ownership deals to be hashed out following up agreements. The deal itself is the security agreement. That is the security agreement. Any other security agreement, and history shows this, doesn't really hold water. We have made a couple such security agreements with Ukraine back in the 90s. We made a deal with the Ukrainians as the Clinton administration was trying to denuclearize and got them to give up their nuclear weapons, their nuclear capabilities. And the agreement, because they wanted them for the purpose of preventing Russia from invading. They said, we have to have these. The only reason Russia does not invade, this is again in the 90s, is because we have nuclear weapons, and they know that. So the United States made this agreement with them saying, you don't need them, because if Russia invades, we will fight for you. We will dispatch our military. The full force of the U.S. military will be in Ukraine to fight them off. And that did not happen. So those sorts of security agreements, at any given moment, we could, at least we've demonstrated this with Ukraine, not fulfill it. But if you, and this is what is smart about this deal and where it benefits Ukraine, when you look at having financial involvement and interest in Ukraine, and then if there is some sort of invasion, we're already in it, particularly if it comes to energy. Or these materials, these minerals that can be used for a number of different things, particularly when it comes to technology. See, the difference between, all right, we don't have any actual interest in Ukraine, but we promise you, if Putin comes along again, or whomever the next leader of Russia may be comes along again, yeah, we'll be there for you. We're going to get in. Well, when that moment comes, it's pretty easy to say, actually, we changed our mind. Because we don't really lose anything doing it that way other than credibility. But if we are there, if we have financial interest, if we have national security interest because of the energy connection, and there's an invasion, that we're already in it. That's not a matter of should we get involved or not. We are involved. And when it comes to energy, I think most people in the world recognize, and the United States clearly not the only country that does this, we're willing to use the military in order to protect our energy interest. It really is the best, most secured, as guaranteed as possible, security agreement that Ukraine can get from any country. Not to mention the fact that other countries like Russia are going to be less likely to invade, understanding that if they do invade and try to take over Ukraine, they at the same time are taking on the United States. It really is a move that satisfies so many necessities if Ukraine is looking for the most security possible. I will say I've heard a lot of people characterize this as being brilliant. And I'd say it's only brilliant in the context of a lack of any meaningful results-based approach that world leaders seem to take any longer. In that context, I think one can say this is brilliant, but in the context of Donald Trump and the way he does things, this is not brilliant. This is just standard for Donald Trump. There is an entity, an institution, an individual who has certain wants, desires, and needs. We have certain wants, desires, and needs. In this particular instance, it's for Trump to end this thing. This is what he wants to do. What conditions, what scenario can I create that makes them want to do what I want them to do? What situation can we craft? What do we have the power to do? What can we offer up that makes them say, wow, this is in my best interest to do this? This is just how Trump operates. In Trump world, it's not brilliant. It's just day-to-day operations. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 59. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny with a high near 66.
Caroline Leavitt made an announcement yesterday regarding the press pool and what journalist will have access when it comes to the briefing room. And this is something that has been what arguably would be a rigged game until now. And it's, the standard media people, the mainstream media, have been the ones that have been allowed to pick. So when you have a town hall like we carry, or a Newsmax, or a One American News Network, or podcasters that cover the news, they're not allowed this access because the major networks are the ones who get to decide. Sort of like the Security Council with the United Nations, and you have the 5 big countries that can veto everything, and oftentimes there's a vote that is in defiance of their best interest, and so it only takes one member, China maybe, and China vetoes it. You're like, well, that's sort of a rigged system. And if you are not part of the mainstream media, you can see how it is that you would view this as a rigged system, because the only way that you're going to get the same sort of access as the mainstream media is if the mainstream media lets you. And may come as a shock, but they don't ever let them. So the White House has decided to change this, and this is the announcement made from the press secretary yesterday.
As you all know, for decades, a group of D.C.-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, The White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today. We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the president's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat. We will continue to rotate a radio pooler and add other radio hosts who have been denied access, especially local radio hosts who serve as the heartbeat of our country. And we will add additional outlets and reporters who are well suited to cover the news of the day and ask substantive questions of the President of the United States, depending on the news he is making on that given day.
Now, obviously, the non-mainstream media is going to be pleased with this. And I think most Americans think, well, that, sounds fair. Why should the mainstream media be able to prevent the other non-mainstream outlets from asking questions of the president? And that doesn't seem right. And as she noted there, this doesn't change the access that the major networks get. That this doesn't change any of that at all. It just is opening it up to the others. Well, they do not like this at all. And in fact, even Fox News is getting a little bit of backlash on this. Breitbart has a piece. Fox News goes all in for the swamp media, backs the WHCA against Donald Trump. And they noted that Heinrich, whose employer Fox News is one of the outlets with a previous stranglehold on White House access, asserted that the establishment media is more worthy of wielding power on behalf of the American people than the White House. She posted on X, "This move does not give the power back to the people. It gives the power to the White House." Heinrich, a WHCA board member, posted, noting that the WHCA is democratically elected by the full-time White House press corps. WHCA has determined pools for decades because only representatives from our outlets can determine resources all those outlets have, such as staffing, in order to get the president's message out to the largest possible audience, no matter the day or hour. So what she's arguing here is that we're the only one that we should pick because we know who's capable of actually doing the job successfully. That we're the ones who are able, if the president is answering questions, we're the only networks that have the capability of making sure that that message gets out there to people. Now, of course, when you consider the technology that is used today, that's total BS. We're not talking about 40 years ago where there were 3 major networks on television, ABC, CBS, NBC, and then you had a few newspapers that had national circulation, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, the New York Times, and that's it. And so, it makes sense to where you don't have the Springfield news leader getting to ask questions because then, the majority of Americans aren't going to, have access to that information. Now, the fact that technology is the way that it is today, and so much news is made by the podcasters, so much news is made by these media outlets that are not part of the mainstream. But in addition to that, if somebody from a non-mainstream media outlet asks a question, the answer can be reported by all these other networks. Fox News can still report on it. In fact, this happens all the time. So the idea that the mainstream media gets to pick which amongst them, which is always them, gets to ask the questions because they are the ones who understand what media outlets are going to actually be able to make sure people hear the answer to the questions, that's ridiculous. And listen, I like Jackie Heinrich. I think she does a fantastic job, but that's a total BS rationale. This is elitism. This is like the country club that all of a sudden decided to let middle-class people into its ranks. And the upper class, they don't like it. Or the all-white country club, or the all, allowing people of color in, or all of a sudden, well, Jewish people are allowed, and we've got a real problem with that. It's elitism is what it is. And it's about a mainstream media that has been, and culturally, just feels as if they are entitled to control all of the messaging. And I'm going to tell you something else. Of course, this is going to be portrayed and viewed as Trump. Well, he's just doing this because he doesn't like these media outlets because they're not kind to him. Well, first off, again, they're not being denied anything that they're getting now. But I'm telling you, this is Trump and the Trump people ahead of the curve. Because what they recognize here is that the sources in which increasingly Americans get their information and trust information is no longer from these mainstream media outlets. In all likelihood, the driving force behind this is not to punish anyone or to stick at anyone. It's recognizing the ever-changing, or I should say increasingly changing landscape in which people get their news and information. And this White House recognizes that. And so if you think about it, you get the politics aside, you get the bias aside. Can anyone deny, even if you listen to the mainstream media, the Democrat Party, they talk about podcasters, they talk about, people who run social media sites and the importance that those outlets have when it comes to the public conversation. In fact, they complain that they have too much power. You have the left grappling with how do we get our own Elon Musk? How do we get our own Joe Rogan, which of course used to be theirs until they ran him off. But point being is there is this recognition that the way Americans get their information is not what it was once upon a time. So why would you continue to operate as if it were? Why would the White House, when it comes to communicating to the American people through the media, operate as if it's 50 years ago in an antiquated way that doesn't recognize and reflect the realities of how people get their information today? Trump, as usual, is just ahead of the curve on this stuff and responding to what Americans do in order to get their information. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. There's a Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line question I'll answer coming up here in just a few moments, asking what happened to the Epstein files. Has it been released yet or is still sitting on her desk? Her being Attorney General Bondi, who had sometime last week said, yeah, the files are on my desk. I've got them on my desk. So, of course, there's a lot, okay, well, where are they? I'll address that coming up. I want to mention KSGF.com, your chance to win tickets to Alabama. Going to be performing live, Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Sunday, May 25th. All of your home loan needs, I want a great homeloan.com, be it refinancing or reverse mortgages. What about a reverse mortgage? What is that? You remember that seemed like something that came up maybe about 10 years ago or so. You saw Tom Selleck late at night with those ads and, you know, a number of other actors that you're like, oh, I recognize that guy. I haven't seen him for a while. What's a reverse mortgage? That sounds scary. I don't know if what am I signing my house over? It actually is a very legitimate and oftentimes fantastic solution for certain people that are, you know, at a certain time in your life and depending on how much equity in your home and it may be right for you. Of course, it may not be at all, just like anything. You know, we're all different. We all have different lives. We all have different motivations. We all have different circumstances. And so it's going to depend for you. So how do you know? Well, that's where the characters and their team come in such a fabulous fashion. They provide you all that information. And I don't mean in some sort of form. They have conversations with you. You can reach out to them and ask them about it. And they're going to ask you questions that you may not even think of. So, you know, they can get a better idea of your particular circumstance, situation, and then let you know what the landscape is. And they're not obviously going to tell you what to do, but they'll provide you the information so that you can make the decision best for yourself, whether that's a mortgage, refinancing, or a reverse mortgage. And all of the contact information for that conversation and to get the process started, if you're ready for that, is iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 59. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66.
Last segment talking about the apoplectic reaction that the mainstream media outlets are having with the announcement that the White House is no longer going to allow the small panel of mainstream news outlets dictate what news outlets get to ask questions during those White House briefings. And they are opening it up to other media outlets. And Caroline Leavitt said, you know, first off, this changes nothing for the main outlets. They're still going to get everything's going to be the same for them, other than now there will be the additional ability for other outlets to ask questions. It could be Town Hall, which is what we carry. It could be One American News Network, could be Newsmax, could be podcasters. And, you know, of course, as I mentioned, the mainstream media, this is awful, this is horrible. Oddly enough, I'm sure they're going to paint this as somehow an attack on the press, when in fact it's freeing up the press in terms of, I don't even like to call it alternative press, but the non-mainstream media press. So arguably, I think it actually is a greater thing for freedom of the press. But this isn't, in my assessment, punishment. This isn't to stick it to the mainstream outlets. This is a recognition that increasingly people do not find these mainstream media outlets as relevant and credible. So why on earth, if your goal is to communicate with the American people, do you stick solely with, in these White House press briefings, this small grouping of messengers that the majority of Americans don't trust any longer? And the White House is moving with the times, is what they're doing. They're recognizing the times, and they are recognizing the increasing increasing credibility that these other non-mainstream outlets have, and that people follow those. And so they are adjusting to the American people. Now, this is an example of the almost laughable irrelevancy of the mainstream media today. So here's a story. New book on Biden by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson reports a cover-up about Joe Biden's decline. Now, this story is being presented in this new book, which is largely based around a press release from the publisher. That, here Jake Tapper in particular, mainstream media guy, and what he's really gotten into the inside, and he's going to blow the lid wide open on this thing and reveal that there was some cover-up when it comes to Joe Biden's decline. Like, are you serious? Yeah, we've known this for a long time. These people are so out of touch with what the American people know, what the American people perceive, how the American people get their news, to think that this is somehow, gonna be like, what? There was a cover-up going on? Thank goodness Jake Tapper from the mainstream media is there to make sure that we know all about it. This isn't to say that there won't be interesting tidbits of information, because I know I'm interested and curious to hear the behind-the-scenes stuff. I've wondered this all along. We've talked openly about it, about how his staff must be in panic every time he gets up to speak, about how it is that whenever they are ready to get him out of a room, they scream loudly for the press to get out, not to prevent them from asking questions, but to prevent Joe Biden from even hearing the questions so he doesn't answer them. All the communication, the conversations, I do find all of that interesting. But the way that this is presented is as if the whole decline itself and the fact that this was known as some sort of revelation. The story reads, the day after Donald Trump won the 2024 election, CNN anchor Jake Tapper and Axios correspondent Alex Thompson decided to co-author a book about what had led the Democrats' party to defeat, with a focus on former President Joe Biden. So this opens up with the premise that they're just like, hey, I know what would be a good idea. Let's look back and let's figure out how Joe Biden lost. Well, of course, his election was overthrown by the Democrat Party. But what led to that even? The deeply sourced reporters found what they call a, quote, cover-up of the former president's serious decline. And cover-up is in quotes. So we're to believe that these mainstream media, now Axios isn't considered as mainstream, but they are left-wing, so they are considered to be credible. But Jake Tapper, clearly a CNN anchor, being presented as it's deep sources, that's how we know that he was in decline, because Jake Tapper had deep sources within the White House, and that they call it a cover-up. Well, thanks for giving it a name for us, because none of us would have otherwise known how to characterize what went on for the entire 4 years of that administration. The resulting book, coming out May 20th, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. The book's publisher, Penguin Press, announced the project today. Quote, what you will learn makes President Biden's decision to run for re-election seems shockingly narcissistic, self-delusional, and reckless. A desperate bet that went bust, and part of a larger act of extended public deception that has few precedents. Again, Jake Tapper appears to be late to the party. This is what the right-wing conspiracy theorist had been saying for years was going on. But thank goodness Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson had deep sources in the Biden administration to reveal all of this to us for the very first time. See, this is when I talk about the relevancy of the mainstream media and the move by the Trump administration to start giving access to outlets other than the mainstream media outlets. It's a relevancy issue. And the way that the media lives in such a complete bubble that is separated from the American people is demonstrated on a daily basis. But when you see a book come out like this, and like I mentioned, I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting stuff. There'll be, again, the behind the scenes, how they reacted when, the stories, the back and forth, this person saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was this bad. And, did he poop his pants at that event in Europe? These sorts of things, yes, they're going to be very interesting to learn. But the concept that if it weren't for Jake Tapper of the mainstream media to write a book like this, the American people would never have even known that there was a cover-up of Biden's decline. What a joke. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, 447 KSGF. A number of you singing a similar song here. Jake Tapper, who aided in covering up Joe's decline, is writing a book about the covering up of Joe's decline and other. They found the, quote, cover-up 4+ years ago, and they joined in on it. And that was the point, Sarah, you were making off air.
It almost makes you wonder if they wrote this book to almost deflect criticism.
I think some of it is that
because
as well.
they weren't doing their job and they were just straight up lying to the public.
I think some of that is like, well, we're just as surprised as everyone.
What?
Fading chalk. But, they even did that. It was a weird hybrid of reaction after that debate where you had this faux shock and this, we just can't, and even an anger expressed, like we were betrayed. We've been told all this time.
We were saving democracy.
Right. But then they couldn't help at the same time dropping these little tidbits to let you know that they knew. I think Jake Tapper, it was, what's his name? It was Meet the Press, who looks like his mom cuts his hair. I can't believe I forgot his name. He left recently. Anyway, it's irrelevant, his name. But, he was one that not long after admitted that, a couple years ago, he's like, I was told by insiders that this was a problem. And so on one hand, they tried to protect their own reputation by covering up the fact they were part of the cover-up. But they can't at the same time help the desire to express self-importance, to let you know, well, I was one of the few who knew about it. Were you talking about Chuck Todd? Chuck Todd, that's it, Chuck Todd. Don't you think it looks like, that's all I think about every time.
I've never paid attention to his haircut.
Well,
but
if you pull up,
yes.
doesn't it look like that? Like his mom cuts his hair.
Just a little bit.
It's straight across the bangs. It's just like, really? Can't get a better haircut? It was just a weird reaction, weird combination. And at the same time, I do believe that there was some anger from the media, not because they were tricked into believing Biden was fine. They knew he wasn't. But they were tricked into believing and told, we can handle this. Don't worry. We can manage it. We know how it is. We know how to handle this guy. We've been doing it the entire administration. We know how to get him through these events. We've been doing it all this time. We'll be able to continue to do it. I think they believe that. And when that debate happened, they were very, very upset and angry because they felt like they had been lied to. They were told that that display was the sort of thing they did not have to worry about happening because Joe Biden was being handled. And so not only did it make them angry because of what it meant for the election itself, but because they had been going on air all that time acting as if Joe Biden was fine. They were having guests on talking about how behind closed doors, Joe Biden is the sharpest guy in the room, that when it comes to these events and the world leaders are standing around, they're all looking to Joe for answers. Whenever Joe Biden is in the room, was it Kamala Harris said that no one was able to grasp the intricacies of events and issues as sharply as Joe Biden was, and that everyone in the world just looked to him for answers. I mean, these completely absurd notions, and the media was allowing that to happen because they were told, don't worry, we can handle him. We can manage this decline. And that debate, which I said it the day the debate was announced. It's like, this is peculiar. They're having a debate before the nomination. This doesn't happen. The debates happen after the nomination, usually in the 6 weeks before the election. There's only one reason to have it this early, and that is if it goes horribly bad, they have the opportunity to swap them out. And I still to this day contend that there is no other reason that would have occurred, and that's exactly why it happened. And, of course, the way it played out backs up my assertion at the time. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I thought it was a pretty interesting segment on CNN for a couple of different reasons about Colorado voters and Donald Trump and the job he's doing so far. And I have the audio, but it's about 5 minutes. I thought about playing it. There's just a lot in there that isn't necessarily relevant to the point that I want to make. And so I thought, well, I'd just share with you the theme of it. But we'll get it posted up. There's a Daily Caller piece about this. So you can watch it in its entirety. But what you have is John King of CNN, and he goes to visit and to talk with people in Colorado's 8th District. And this is a district in which most recently the Republican congressperson won by only, I think, 2,000 votes. Now, while I don't know the total population or voting population of that particular district, that is something that it suggests that, hey, that's kind of a toss-up in terms of those numbers. And so Trump's success in the first 2 years, that is a district that there could be an impact on because of those results or lack of results. And so John King goes and he talks to these different people. And the first one is pretty humorous. It's this guy who he doesn't like Trump. And he doesn't like Musk, and he talks about how, Musk says that all these people that, are 100 and 150 years old are on Social Security and they save billions of dollars. And he goes, you can't trust that. To which John King, the reporter for CNN, says, yeah. What do you mean you can't? I didn't know that this was in contention. I did not know that this was a matter of opinion. So here you have CNN that is verbally agreeing with a guy who, just doesn't even believe that these things are happening. The funny part of it, though, John King said, so if you were to revote, if you were to vote today, would you vote Kamala Harris? And he's like, no, I'd still vote Trump. But the other part of it that is relevant, 3 different people, Trump supporters, 1 Hispanic woman, 2 white guys. The Hispanic woman, I think she's a translator for the courts. What's her name here? Esmeralda Ramirez Rey. And she describes herself as a conservative independent, voted for Trump in order for the U.S.-Mexico border to be secured and to be respected on the world stage. She said, I voted for that. I love it. I voted for a president that was going to put America first. I voted for a president that was going to secure our borders. And I voted for a president that was going to make sure that we were respected throughout the world, and I believe I'm getting that. Now, she is a court interpreter for non-English speaking defendants. And she expressed reservations about Trump's deportation and border policy, stating that migrant workers are the people picking our crops. And so what she talks about here, she's Trump supporters, like, I like how things are happening. But then she did acknowledge, and she may have been prompted, I don't really necessarily like, secure border wanted it, but, I wish there was more of a focus on just the criminals, that some of these people who are in this country illegally that, are picking the crops and everything, I don't know about deporting them, so I'm not fully on board with that. Now, I think that she is to some degree misinformed about exactly how those operations are playing out, but that's not the point, okay? Trump supporter, voted for him, likes a lot of what he's doing, but recognizes here's something I don't like about him, so to some degree. Then they interviewed Todd Waffle, the owner of Satire Brewing Company. And he told King that he likes the Trump administration and that they're going full speed on all of this stuff. He said that Trump's going to say what he's going to say, so he doesn't like his personality, though, saying, some of it's going to be exaggerated, some of it's not going to be true. But at the end of the day, you got to sift through it all. Is he going to get things done? Is he going to get the country moving in the right direction? As a brewery, he noted that the steel tariffs are something that have been a bit of disruption for his business. He had plans to expand. And, of course, you're talking, about a lot of steel. And the steel tariff situation, because of the increased cost, is something that has impacted him. So here's second Trump supporter. I like him for all these reasons. Now, here's something, though, that, I don't really care for. Then they talked to a third Trump supporter, small business owner named Austin Jenkins. He expressed hope that Trump will work on shrinking the high cost of living in the area, lower taxes, and reduce regulations to help his cocktail bar and his hatchet house. Jenkins said Trump appear to be the lesser of 2 evils in comparison to Harris. Despite voting for Trump as the lesser of 2 evils, Jenkins criticized the 25% tariffs imposed on Canada and Mexico and his approach to arresting illegal immigrants. So here's a third individual that I wouldn't even say, I guess it depends on your definition of Trump supporter, but he voted for Donald Trump, though there are things that he does not like. And his vote for Trump wasn't so much a vote for Trump, but maybe arguably a vote against Kamala Harris because he said lesser of 2 evils. Now, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because this defies the way that the media and the left describes people who vote for Donald Trump. When you listen to them, somebody who votes for Donald Trump is a cult follower. Anyone who votes for Donald Trump, they have blinders on. He is a cult leader. There's absolutely nothing in the world that he could ever do that a Trump supporter would criticize. That people who vote for Donald Trump are all brainwashed and that they worship and praise absolutely everything that he does, no matter what it is. Now, here John King went out and he found 3 people who voted for Trump, and every single one of them were able to identify things about Trump that he was doing as president that they did not like, that they didn't agree with. That is not the way that the media and the left present, and I think genuinely think of Trump supporters. What is interesting is the perspective, and John King, you get this when you watch the piece, if you sit through and watch it. If not, I'll just describe to you the tenor of it is that, well, despite the fact that they recognize Trump is doing some things here that is against their best interest, they still support him anyhow. So what they're trying to do is paint it as, well, that's Trump supporters. Even when they know he does wrong things, they still support him. But isn't that the opposite of the way that they present the Trump supporter as someone who likes him because they believe everything he does? See, no matter how you are, as somebody who voted for Donald Trump, you are a bad person. You either support everything he does and can't find anything wrong, or if you do have a measured approach and you recognize that there are certain things you don't necessarily agree with, you're still wrong because you voted for him anyway. Which, of course, then you ask, what are you supposed to do? Be 100% loyal and blind and just accept everything? Or are you supposed to be someone that says, yeah, this is the guy that I think's best in terms of president right now, but there's some things with which I disagree? I happen to believe the latter is the healthier way. And by the way, if you notice, it's much different than the way Democrats approach supporting their elected officials so often. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. Streaming live, KSGF.com. If you don't miss any of the show, fear not. We do have the podcast at KSGF.com, the app, Spotify, iTunes, at KSGF.com in the app. You can register to win a pair of tickets to catch Alabama live at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena Sunday, May 25th. You know what's not in my notes over here?
What?
Is the Five Guys deal on Friday.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
Huh, that is weird.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 prompts to mention the Alabama giveaway, which is a much higher frequency than I ever have on my little listing over here.
Yeah.
But none for Five Guys.
That's weird. Well, we have a local for Les Ozarks this Friday. And this week, it's Five Guys, where you can get a $30 gift certificate for just $15. All you got to do is head to KSGF.com, 10 a.m., and you can score that deal while supplies last.
We were in our promotional meetings yesterday, and while this was being discussed, then Houston, who's the promotions director, said, and Nick, since you always ask, there are a limit to per person. I do always ask that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you
how
do.
many people? Because people want to know that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind
Maybe
of surprised I'm the only one that ever asked that question out of
Maybe he
everyone in
just
the
got
building.
mad, and he's like, how dare you try to sideline me at my own meeting?
No, I think that
And then he just took it off, and he's like, I'll show you.
I think it was his way of complimenting me for wanting details. That's what I think. So that will be Friday, 10 a.m. at KSGF.com. And yeah, I think, did he say, well, there were 100 total?
I believe
Is that-
so, yes.
They will go quickly. It's a good deal, Five Guys. And so you can get 2 of those. So then you're talking $30 for $60 worth, because it's 15 for 30. Is that right?
Correct.
Again, don't have the notes in front of me because for whatever reason today my little information,
Your cheat sheet.
my cheat sheet here doesn't have that on there. I knew when I opened it up this morning, I thought it seemed like something's missing.
Well, we do have all those details up at KSGF.com.
Yes, indeed. And Friday we have Heroes Breakfast at Scramblers. So veterans get free breakfast thanks to Scramblers, Warrior's Journey, Delta Roofing and Air Services, heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical. The Atlantic, which is a left-wing magazine, has a piece in which they're arguing that there needs to be a liberal Tea Party. Liberal Tea Party. Over at The Atlantic, writes PJ Media, which used to be a serious magazine, David Graham wonders, quote, what would a liberal Tea Party look like? He wrote, a new president has taken office, elected in response to widespread economic dissatisfaction. Now he's trying to make big changes to the government, and some voters are upset. They're angry at the president's party for backing the changes, and they're angry at the opposition party for not doing more to stop it. That's a fitting description of what's going on now, but I was thinking of 2009, when the Tea Party movement erupted amid Barack Obama's attempt to pass major health care reform. And so, you know, the whole essence of the piece here is that this recognition that and first off, the Tea Party was not about Obamacare. It wasn't about socializing medicine. The Tea Party was about the massive spending and the push to increase taxes, hence TEA, taxed enough already. It's in the name, which I suspect a lot of people on the left and the media don't even realize. That they're thinking, oh, the Tea Party, they're talking about the Boston Tea Party because they're all angry, and the Boston Tea Party, they took tea and they threw it into the harbor, and so there was a little bit of a temper tantrum thrown like toddlers, and that's what these anti-Obama racists are doing now, so that's why they're calling themselves the Tea Party. No, it was for TEA, taxed enough already. Which, of course, makes it hilarious, this idea that there could be any sort of liberal version of the Tea Party, at least in terms of context, because liberals are for more taxes. Big government. Take more money from the people who produce in the private sector, take it away from them, take it out of the private sector, and use it in order to expand government. That is the opposite of the Tea Party. Now, if they're talking about needing some sort of, grouping of left-wing individuals that all get together in crowds in order to have their voices heard, like the Tea Party, if that's what they're talking about, there have been numerous versions of that over the last several years. You had BLM with the massive riots causing over $2 billion worth of damage, resulting in a number of murdered individuals, including law enforcement. You had the left-wing movement, even prior to that Summer of Love, that were tearing down statues and demanding that flags be removed and the names of our founding fathers be removed off of everything. You had Antifa that largely worked in tandem with Black Lives Matter, going around attacking police officers, burning businesses to the ground. We had the anti-Semitic protest with left-wing activists primarily on university campuses all over this country after October 7th. The left has had, and that's what the ultimate crux of the piece here. It's not the purpose of the Tea Party, which was for smaller government, lower taxes, but if only the left could manage to collectively have activists all get together in order to have their voices heard. You've done that several times. It's resulted in death and destruction. It's resulted in severe anti-Semitism. So it's not a lacking of activism by left-wing Democrat activists, any stretch of the imagination. It's occurred on numerous occasions. Now, he's missing that point because it hasn't worked for them. It isn't anything that has made the average American go, you know what? Those seem like reasonable people with reasonable causes. I think that I'll sway over to their direction. It's the lack of effectiveness that is missing for the left when it comes to their Tea Party equivalent. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 59. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66.
Jim down in Texas texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line talking about the Tea Party and, of course, the Tea Party during the Obama era that was taxed enough already. He said that if the liberals wanted to keep the name, it could be tax everyone always. Oh, yeah, that would work.
That does work.
Yeah, that is very, very fitting. Bradford Light from Kansas Territory Brewing Company. Now available at some of the area Macadoodles, also Price Cutters. A Golden Elixir, tribute to the industrious spirit that defines the Heartland of beer, speaking to the dedication of the hands that built the Heartland, in fact. And then there is, for a little bit of a more tropical twist, Pineapple Life Coach, where you can transport yourself to a tropical paradise with Pineapple Coach, infused with the exotic essence of ripe pineapples, ABV of 4.0, so you can have a few of those. And that also is available at some area Macadoodles Price Cutters. The story behind the Kansas Territory Brewing Company out of Washington, Kansas, which is a very, very small town. It is one that I think a lot of you appreciate, and if you want to check out what all their offerings are and learn a little bit about their history, you can go to KansasTerritoryBrewingCo.com. But in the meantime, either of those offerings, Bradford Light, Pineapple Life Coach, available at Price Cutters in some area Macadoodles. There's a repeat of a story that we mentioned a few weeks ago. Legislators reintroducing Pony Up Act to hold the USPS accountable. The reason that, obviously, this is a local news piece is because this is something that people, not just, I mean, there are certain areas of the country, but I know in this area, have been dealing with this problem with the Postal Service. We've talked about this on a number of occasions just a few weeks ago. I have, friends who work in the Postal Service, and then, of course, I get communications when this subject comes up about just what a train wreck it is in terms of how it's being run. Total train wreck. And it is an institution that once upon a time was known for, nor rain nor shine, basically a theme of, without remembering the entire, saying or mission statement or whatever it is you want to call it. It was known for, it did not matter whatever the weather was, whatever the conditions were, your mail was going to get delivered. Now, I do think at the same time, historically, the post office has gotten a bit of a bad rap because it is, to me, if you take aside the problems that have occurred over the last, however long it's been. I know I began really noticing it before Christmas. But the idea that you can just take something and put a stamp on it and have it go somewhere else in the world, just like in a week's time or even across the country, for whatever a stamp cost today, 50 cents, 70 cents, I don't even know what they cost any longer, but that you can, send that and it can go to a completely different state, and in some instances make it there in a day or two. Given the mass amount of volume out there, I think that's pretty remarkable. That being said, it is not living up to the expectations that are held by the American people, and I think the expectations that are also presented by the Postal Service itself. And to cite that, I will use the fact that if you use their tracking, you purchase an item and it's going to be delivered through the United States Postal Service, you get a tracking number. And for me, anyhow, over the past 6 months, anytime it initially says, oh, here's the estimated date of delivery, according to the Postal Service itself, forget about that. I don't think I've had anything actually delivered on time in terms of a package from the Postal Service, according to their own timeline provided through their website, in 6 to 8 months. This may vary depending on the part of the country you live in, but I know many of you have experienced this as well. This Pony Up Act, however, well-intended as it may be, is not going to fix the problem. Western Missouri Congressman Mark Alfred, he's in the northern area. This is your guy,
That's
right?
my guy.
This is your guy. By your guy, I mean you're in his district.
Yes.
Says that he's heard the complaints and he's reintroduced the Pony Up Act, holding the post office accountable for reimbursing the customer the late fees on bills that never made it to their destination. He's hoping it's the start of overhauling the service. And so the ultimate idea here behind it is, well, this isn't going to change until people are held accountable. And so the accountability here is if you, let's say you pay your bills through the mail and you get a bill in the mail and maybe it comes to you late. And so you have a late fee. Maybe you don't even pay through the mail, but You receive the bill in the mail, and the day that the mail comes is a day after the deadline to make a payment without a late fee. Or you do pay in the mail, and you send it in, but it doesn't get there, or it gets there late, and so you get to charge a late fee. The idea behind this is that you then go somehow through some system, and then the Postal Service will reimburse you those dollars. Now, one problem with this is the fact that I do not believe the U.S. Postal Service will care one bit about doing that. We're not talking about a business that is dependent on making a profit. And when you are not, your existence does not depend on making a profit, those sorts of fines or penalties, that's not really that relevant. Like, all right, we'll pay it, whatever. I also suspect that most people are not going to bother to go through the process of trying to get that refund. Now, I'm not sure what that process would look like, but you're obviously going to have to provide some sort of proof, right? The U.S. Postal Service isn't just going to take your word for it. You're not going to be able to fill out a form online that says, oh, yeah, my payment was late because of you guys, and so they charged me $30. And then you're magically going to get a $30 check sent to you in the mail whenever it would get to you, or directly deposited. That's not how it's going to work. You're going to have to gather some sort of proof, some sort of evidence, and what that looks like. Even if you show, oh, here they charged me a late fee, how is it they know that you actually sent it on time and that it got there late because of them? Are you going to have to provide some sort of proof when it comes to postmarking? I suspect that whatever steps that a person would have to go through in order to prove this in the first place, to then get the post office to reimburse them, would probably be so burdensome that the average person isn't even going to mess with it. Plus, you are relying on the reliability, when it would come to these reimbursements, of the institution that is the problem in the first place. The reason that you end up having to go to them in order to pay for your late fee, your penalty, your fine, and you're relying on their reliability in order to do that, was because they were unreliable in the first place. Whatever occurs with the Postal Service, it's got to be something that changes the entire way that it functions and runs. You cannot just take the institution as it is and allow it to continue to function and operate the way that it does, but then say when the result is one that doesn't turn out the way that the customer expects, then they can come to you and they can request a refund, and because then that just becomes the cost of doing business. There has to be a massive change. So this may be well-intended, but I think that if a rational person thinks it through, will recognize that this is something that is not in a meaningful way going to really be helpful to the consumer, and is not something that is going to change the way that the post office operates. So it doesn't really satisfy anything. Looks good, looks like, look here, I'm doing something, I'm taking care of this. It's not meaningful results, not going to happen. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Before we get to the latest traffic, the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Walter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, most people don't know what happened to the post office. You understand lawfare, where they turned the DOJ against conservatives, and they turned the FBI against conservatives. Liberals have turned the post office against conservatives. Jobs were transferred from here to liberal Kansas City. Mail that used to stay here in town and go across the town now goes to Kansas City and may take 2 weeks to get across town. A package that I sent to my son, because they couldn't haul it on the airplane back to New York City, took 4.5 weeks. It spent 4 days in Springfield, 14 days in Kansas City, and was, quote, in transit the rest of the time. But the Biden administration doubled down on the Obama administration's policies. If you're a conservative area, they're just going to do everything possible to hurt you. And they use the post office as a weapon against the United States citizens.
Well, whatever the reason or motivation, the one thing that is clear is that in its current form, it does not function effectively. I mentioned that I have a lot of friends who work in the Postal Service, and they say it's management. They say it's the way things are run. I had a conversation with one person who noted that there were these rooms, this was locally in the Springfield branch or hub, whatever you call it, rooms that were storage rooms were just stacked full of packages that were supposed to have been delivered, and they weren't yet. And I said, is it a funding issue? And the answer is no, it's a management issue. That's one person's opinion within the Postal Service. So the management's horrible. The way that they allocate not HR, but the way that they allocate the workforce, and it's abysmal. Noting that they were having people that were maintenance people go through and paying them time and a half to do the sorting of mail, to go through, these areas that weren't even the areas of why it was they were hired or their area of expertise. There was a comment made to me by somebody who is in the private sector that deals with deliveries. And he made a comment I thought that was really interesting. He said that anytime you have a business model where it costs you the same amount of money to send, these aren't his exact words, but this was the point. It costs you the same amount of money to get a service that involves sending an envelope to somebody across the street, and it costs you the same amount to send it to New York or Los Angeles or out in the boondocks somewhere, that's not a business model that can be sustained on its own. And I thought that really actually makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought of it that way. It would be like renting a car, and it doesn't matter where you drive it or how much you drive it. You pay one price no matter what. You can't really sustain that. I mean, the only way you can sustain that is to average it all out, and then people who are, needing to just send an envelope, quote, across the street, have to pay a huge price spike in order to offset those who have envelopes go a further. But you just, think about, and I don't know how you would calculate the cost, but you're talking about the manpower, the gas. You think about the difference in that. In terms of actual cost of mailing and sending a letter to somebody on the other side of town versus the other side of the country. Yet the consumer pays the exact same amount regardless. I thought, that's interesting. I had not thought of that before. So back to the original point here in this Pony Up Act, that's not going to change. This is, to me, a demonstration of the problem with Washington or Jeff City, and it's you have these massive structural problems, and then you just, pass some sort of legislation that, well, we're not going to fix the problem, but when the problem does happen, then here's some mechanism where you can take it upon yourself to remedy it. And that's not the sort of answer we need. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 35. For your Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 59. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll have sunny skies with a high near 66.
For those that don't know, Sarah has a show on Saturdays.
That's right. Every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. right here. Springfield's Talk 1041.
Another show that is on Saturday, All Outlaw, Kyle White. He has a new Facebook page.
Yes,
correct?
that's right. So he had a Facebook page. So many of you probably already had liked it. And if you did, you probably noticed that it got hacked and they're selling weird skincare routines now. So he has a new Facebook page.
Like he must really be
like,
falling on hard times.
Yeah, like what is going on with him?
His little side job out in the courthouse lobby in between cases.
Yep. You can get your skincare routine and your legal concerns all figured out in one place. No. So he has a new Facebook page. It's All Outlaw with Kyle Wyatt. If you want to follow it, I'll link it in our must-read headlines so you can give it a like.
I wanted to mention an upcoming event. It is a fundraising event / good time. And this is something that was brought to my attention because of a friend of mine who's actually going to be performing at the event. And it is an event to support Krista Stevens. If you are in the Republic area, you may be familiar with her, local business owner, her and her husband. And she has been battling stage 3 colon cancer. So there's going to be a fundraising event that is coming up this Friday, I think, February 28th. Is that Friday?
Yeah, that's Friday.
February 28th from 6 to 10 p.m. at the American Legion Post over on Scenic. It's the one with the helicopter.
Yeah, it's right down the road from Nathaniel Green.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's open to the public. And there's going to be music and just going to be a good time fundraising event. Act 3 will start the evening entertainment followed by one night only. One night only. I haven't heard them before, but my friend is in that band, and so that's his involvement in it. And of course, he knows these people as well. But I know in the Republic community, because of the being their family, small business owners, and they're well known in the community. But it's an upcoming event in which, of course, these funds will go to help with any costs associated with it. And it's just a good time, live music, and a great way to kick off the weekend. So. And I'll make sure if you don't have a flyer, there's a flyer.
Yeah, send it to me. I'll get it up.
I'll send you the flyer. That way you can get it up. I don't know. I keep trying to. It looks like I'm going to be able to go. Then I'm not going to be able to go, but I want to go because I've never seen him play before. And of course, it's a good cause as well, and it's always fun to do something good while having a good time at the same time. Just the News reporting, top education nominee Linda McMahon backs plan to abolish the department. I love this. Love it. Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Education, Linda McMahon, confirmed her full support for the president's plan to abolish the department altogether. Quote, President Trump believes that the bureaucracy in Washington should be abolished so that we can return education to the states where it belongs, she wrote in a statement according to the Hill newspaper. She went on to say, I wholeheartedly support and agree with this mission. The nominee issued the statement in response to questions from Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren and Andy Kim. McMahon has already cleared the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, but has not received formal confirmation of the post. The vow now goes to the Senate for a full vote, and she's expected to clear that final hurdle. I like this for a number of reasons. One, because this is another example of Trump doing what Republicans for a very long time claimed that they believed in, but didn't actually do. Republicans over time, at least in my adult experience, have had a habit on campaigning on certain things and eliminating certain things, but then they never do it. And it's usually those who love to carry the torch of official Republican, official conservative, that don't do it while accusing Trump of not being a, quote, real Republican, even though he's the one that actually does the things that the Republican Party says it stands for. This is an example of a couple of different things. For the average American person, being comfortable with the way that we always do things, even if it doesn't work. We were talking about the Postal Service in the last segment and how it is operating in a way that is not what one would consider to be successfully being run. And so whenever somebody comes along, like Trump, and suggests maybe we should do things differently, like really differently, people freak out. We got to do without the post office. We can't do without that. It's got to be run exactly the same way that it's run today. Department of Education. What good has it done? I mean, that's the only question that needs to be asked. Now, I know that, and we've already seen it, Democrats portraying this as some sort of attack on education. Well, if we're talking about meaningful results, the Department of Education has been an attack on education. I've seen, as have you, the irony of people who support the Department of Education in its current form and our approach to education in its current form, posting about all of the failures of education in the country today and then saying, and now they want to get rid of the Department of Education. You're making the point. What good has it done? There are two approaches to, Doge is really putting a focus on this, two approaches to whether or not some sort of government institution should exist. You have people that I would argue are usually normal people whose approach is to say, all right, well, explain to me, why do we need this? What is the return on investment? How much is it going to cost? What are your goals with this thing? What is the purpose? What is the long-term plan? What are the benchmarks? What are you hoping to achieve? And when I say hoping to achieve, you say better education. Okay, but what does that look like? We have to have a way to measure whether or not it's successful. Then you have what is the establishment approach of here's an institution and you just can't get rid of it. Well, why not? Well, because education. Okay, but that's why we're getting rid of it. How about this? How about you explain why we need it? How about you explain, in the time that the Department of Education has existed, the early 80s, which is a surprise to a lot of people. If you listen to the left, you'd think that no one in the world has ever been educated except for the existence of the Department of Education. This is something that many of you listening now went through school, and the Department of Education didn't even exist, depending on your age. But I believe what needs to happen, the people who claim that it is absolutely necessary for this institution to continue to exist, you explain why. Since it has begun and it has been a player in the game of education, show me how it has benefited. Now, that's not going to happen because the answer is it has not. We have continued since that period of time to see a severe decline in education. I mean, you look at some cities like Baltimore, where the comprehension rate when it comes to mathematics and it comes to English, they are graduating people in which there are literally zero students that are graduating that meet those basic standards. That's clearly an example on one end of the spectrum. I mean, you can't get worse than that. You can't get worse than zero students. But is it not under the umbrella of the Department of Education? What are you going to argue? Well, I mean, they can't really help that. That's a state issue, a local issue. Oh, so it's state and local that should be taking care of these problems. Well, you can't prove that the existence of the Department of Education is the reason for this decline. Well, it certainly hasn't helped. I mean, what is the point of it? We have got to get past this mindset. And a lot of this is on the American people. We have to start thinking. And we have to start being adults about this sort of thing. Because it deals with education, this is one of those things that very easily, let's be honest, there are going to be a lot of Americans like, well, now wait, we can't get rid of that. Why? I'm willing to have that conversation. You tell me how things have improved since it came into place. And then draw a line from the Department of Education's actions to that success. So that's how things work in a world in which you are looking for actual results. And we're not talking about some sort of just standard product that's being put out on the marketplace. We're talking about human beings, children, at a cost per public student that is far beyond what occurs in most other nations, despite the fact that all of those other nations that spend less have a much better outcome. We are failing. We are failing. And the ridiculous absurdity of demanding that we continue to do the same thing over and over again, we continue to fail these kids over and over again, it's beyond ridiculous. It is straight up immoral. And when it comes down to the practicality of it, you cannot say that you genuinely care about children's education when your approach is to cling on to an institution that has done nothing whatsoever to actually help education, but has, at least in its existence, presided over the complete decline of education. It is almost sinful that we allow the Department of Education to even exist, given the results. And for those, again, that want to say, well, now, it's not because of the Department of Education these things are occurring. It's not because of the Department of Education that we are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to results. Well, then tell me what it has done. Because if your answer is, well, it hasn't really done anything, then I guess we don't need it, do we? This is one of those scenarios in which logically, realistically, based on fact, it is such a no-brainer that this department should not exist, yet even within the American public, you have, I would argue, probably a majority of Americans who say, no, but we need to keep it. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. She's the best. I've utilized her. Sarah's utilized her. I know a lot of you have utilized her. Particularly if you, when it comes to your home loans, use iwantagreathomeloan.com. They work with Emily Johnson. I cannot stress to you how beneficial it can be to have those institutions and entities know each other, be familiar with each other, those people, I should say. Because, there may be times where there is a communication that is needed in terms of information one has, the other needs, and just that working relationship can benefit you in so many ways. And Emily Johnson's relationships with people that are in home improvement industries, I'll use that as an umbrella term. You're trying to sell your home, but the buyers have a number of requirements in order to purchase it that are home improvement requirements, and you don't know who's good. You don't know who's going to rip you off. You just don't know these things. She does. I mean, she knows. You think about the number of people she deals with on a daily basis and the number of circumstances in which she has dealt with these people in these industries. She's seen the bad, she's seen the mediocre, she's seen the excellent, and so she has those relationships for you. I'm telling you, if you're going to look to sell your home, you're going to look to buy your home, or you know someone who is, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. The FBI, according to the Daily Wire, has reportedly opened an investigation into the origins of an alleged off-the-books operation launched a decade ago by former FBI Director James Comey to use undercover honeypot agents to infiltrate Trump's first presidential campaign. The Washington Times reporting the alleged scheme was disclosed by an FBI whistleblower last year in a protected disclosure to the House Judiciary Committee. A honeypot refers to an undercover operative, usually an attractive woman, who uses sexual allure to entice targets and gain information from them. The newspaper reports that the whistleblower alleged that 2 women who worked at the FBI went undercover and infiltrated Trump's campaign. Nothing like good old-fashioned election interference. The Washington Times said that the FBI, now under the leadership of Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, quote, is looking for those once undercover employees under Mr. Comey's direction. The whistleblower further alleged that Comey personally knew and personally directed the operation targeting the Trump campaign in an apparent attempt to find incriminating evidence of any kind of a crime that could be used to open an official investigation. In other words, entrapment. The whistleblower disclosed, quote, the case had no predicated foundation, so Comey personally directed the investigation without creating an official case file in Sentinel or any other FBI system. The FBI has multiple methods of protecting highly sensitive information, so Comey did not have a legitimate reason not to officially create an official investigation file or have a file number. It was done off the books. We spent years being told that Russia was the great enemy of our form of government, of our system of liberty, because he was interfering in our elections. In fact, the entire idea behind the fake P-tape, this was the fake story that alleged Putin had dirt on Trump, that there were prostitutes that Trump hired to urinate on a mattress in a hotel that Barack Obama once stayed in. Of course, it all turned out not to be true, like everything else in the Russian dossier. But the idea here was that Putin either just obtained this information or perhaps even worse, created a scenario in which he would have dirt on Donald Trump that he could use against him. And we were told that this was such an attack on our form of government that for that reason alone, aside from any other reason, Russia was enemy number one. And Trump was compromised. Yet here's another instance where, according to these whistleblowers, it was our own government doing that. Here you had James Comey acting much like a director of the KGB or the Stasi, off the books, pulling people aside, in this case, according to the whistleblower, female agents to try and trap Trump into something so they would have control over him. When it comes to or came to election interference, when it came to KGB tactics, it wasn't the Russians that we needed to worry about. It wasn't Putin that was the danger to this country. It was James Comey and our FBI. And much like everything else from the left, we see projection at play. What they accuse the enemy of doing is what they themselves have been doing. And I hope that whatever truth there is, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and the other people that they are surrounding themselves with and putting in these positions of authority in the FBI and you get the Justice Department, Bondi, any of these institutions, get to the truth of all of this. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Alabama, live, Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Sunday, March 25th. You can buy tickets, of course, or even better yet, register for your chance to win them by going to KSGF.com. Someone had texted in the question, though I apologize to that person because I imagine they are no longer listening. But maybe they are. Maybe they are. It was very early this morning. And the question was, if I can find it, it was asking about, what?
I said, is this the Epstein question?
Yes.
Okay.
How'd you know?
Because I was also waiting for you to answer it.
So the question essentially was, what happened with this?
Yeah, because Friday it was announced.
Yeah, so Pam Bondi had said, I got it on my desk.
Yes.
And so, oh, okay. All right. Well, that sounds like things are about to be revealed. And one of the things that Trump had said for some time now, that along with other secrets being hidden by the government would be revealed. And so everyone's like, all right, where is it? What's going on? What's happening with it? And in fact, we just don't know the answer to that question, but you're not the only one asking the question. There are Republicans that are asking the question as well. In fact, Fox News has a story, GOPers pressing for the release of JFK Epstein files, mounting pressure on the Justice Department on all of this. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican from Florida, who's leading the House Oversight Committee's task force on the declassification of federal secrets, is pushing the Department of Justice for answers on when it's going to happen. And so far, she says, she's faced silence. Luna said in a post Monday on X, on February 11th and 19th, House Oversight sent a letter to the DOJ asking for status on releasing the Epstein files, as well as JFK, etc. The DOJ has not responded, reaching out on X because we can't seem to get a response from the Attorney General Pam Bondi. What is the status of the documents? These documents were ordered to be declassified. So you have Luna, a Republican congresswoman from Florida, that is even taking to X, sort of kind of publicly calling out, what's the deal here? What's going to happen? And so to answer your question, I don't know. Whatever is going on, this is just not the sort of thing that this administration is going to be able to backtrack from. Not that they would want to, but listen, it's one thing. I've just tried to think of this. You're Bondi, you're someone else who has access to this, and you're all, we're going to release this. You open it up, and you realize there's some people in there that's not an easy thing to move forward with. But at this point, I don't think there just really isn't any choice or option. So we'll see when that day comes and what names are revealed. Glenn Beck is coming up next. I'll talk with you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.